Here's capitalist South Korea at night from space. Here's socialist North Korea. Yeah. In 1990, Venezuela was wealthier than Poland. But then Poland, finally free of Soviet-style economics, went all in on capitalism. And now their economy is as big as Japan. And people there have high wages, low inflation, cars, vacations, homes. Meanwhile, Venezuela traded capitalism for Hugo Chavez's socialism for the 21st century, which turned out to be like socialism in the last century or any century. Mess. It turned one of Latin America's richest countries into one of its poorest. Low wages, high inflation, shortages, outages, 8 million people fleeing. If you think New York can somehow reinvent this wheel, you're in for a rude awakening. Zohran can't make your wishes come true. You're thinking of Zoltar.
Joining me now is the Federalist's elections correspondent, Brianna Lyman. Brianna, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're joining us from New York, where it's been 1 week since Zohran Mamdani was elected the city's new mayor. In his latest interview, Mamdani says he plans to call President Trump ahead of taking office.
I will be reaching out to the White House and as we prepare to actually take office. I will be proactive in the work that I do, and I think that is because of the responsibility I hold to 8.5 million people of being their mayor. It is important that you are open to working with anyone, no matter what disagreements you may have.
Brianna, the president has called Mamdani his, quote, little communist. How do you see that call playing out?
Yeah, well, Mamdani is doing this because New York City has a very unique relationship both with New York State and with the federal government. And President Trump has made it very clear he is willing to cut off funding to New York City if it descends into a communist chaos regime, which I think a lot of us believe it will given Mamdani's policy. So I think Mamdani is trying to put a good foot forward with the president to try and, maybe buy some political capital. But I don't think President Trump will buy it. That being said, I think it's a smart maneuver on Mamdani's part because he doesn't just represent liberals and progressives. He does represent, hundreds of thousands of Republicans in New York City. So having a good relationship with the president wouldn't hurt.
Look, I guess it's better than not having one, but he did tell him in his victory speech, listen to what I have to say, and he was aggressive himself, so it'll certainly be interesting. Look, I want to stay with New York, and the grandson of former President John F. Kennedy, Jack Schlossberg, announced this week he will run for the congressional seat of Manhattan, and this is just some of him in his campaign launch.
He's stripping citizens of their civil rights and silencing his critics. The worst part is, it doesn't have to be this way. And it wasn't always. We deserve better, and we can do better. And it starts with the Democratic Party winning back control of the House of Representatives. With control of Congress, there's nothing we can't do. Without it, we're helpless to a third term. My name is Jack Schlossberg, and I'm running for Congress.
Brianna, it seems like Schlossberg has taken a leaf out of Mamdani's anti-establishment playbook. Do you think he'll be successful?
I think he has a good chance. You know, he'd be running for the seat currently held by Jerry Nadler, who is just as far left as Schlossberg or, you know, whoever else would be taking that seat. So it's not far-fetched to think that this Kennedy descendant could win the election. That doesn't mean he's going to be able to help bring the House back for Democrats, even though I do think Democrats have a shot at winning the House back next year. Something else that JFK's grandson said that was just really despicable is he called out RFK Jr. You don't attack family like that, especially in public. And this isn't the first time we've seen RFK Jr. attacked like this by his relatives. And I think it just goes to show you that these people have no shred of decency or humanity, because someone with both of those things would not publicly criticize a family member in such a horrible way.
Yeah, we've seen that before, obviously, as you say, including with our ambassador here to Australia, Caroline Kennedy. Look, I spoke about this a bit in my editorial, but the BBC is in turmoil this week after top executives resigned following revelations that the broadcaster had doctored a speech by Donald Trump given on January 6th before protesters stormed the Capitol. The BBC has now apologized to Trump, but it says that it won't pay him the compensation he wants. Brianna, you've written a piece this week on The Federalist about this whole saga and why maybe some of the same detractors in the US should follow suit. What did you say?
Yeah, BBC executives, now mind you, they're taking the least amount of accountability that they should be taking, but it's still more accountability than broadcasters here in America have taken over the past decade, right? We've seen American broadcasters spread the Russia collusion hoax, the Kavanaugh rape hoax, the children in cages, the ICE agents whipping migrants. The list goes on about hoaxes they perpetuated to try and harm President Donald Trump or his legacy. And never are they fired. In fact, most of them are winning Pulitzer Prizes. They're getting promotions, raises. So they're actually rewarded for improper journalism.
It's very similar to here in Australia, as I also pointed out at the top of the show. We've got our own public broadcaster who hasn't taken responsibility for some of the fake news narratives they've been pushing. Do you think it's likely that Trump will follow through with this $1 billion lawsuit that he's threatening, given he's got the apology but hasn't got the compensation from the BBC?
I would like to see him do it. I think these left-wing progressive media outlets, and the BBC is, you know, kind of equivalent to our NPR or PBS, but it really toes the line of being the progressive wing of the media over there. And I think there needs to be accountability. They can't just get away with this defamation and this slanderous actions and think that they can just say, oh, sorry, my bad, we're not going to do it again. That's not enough because they've done it for so long. So I hope he goes forward with it.
Yeah, it would certainly send a very strong message to the rest of the media, wouldn't it? Look, speaking of lefty media, take a look here at CNN host Abby Phillips and what she has to say about dealing with conservatives.
Conservatives are living in a completely different information world than liberals. And breaking that down needs to be done. Because when you don't ever even hear the facts, it's hard to even know that you're wrong. And that happens a lot. I mean, half my job sometimes is knowing what the latest conspiracy is, so that if it comes up, I'm ready to address it. Because it happens a lot where people don't even know that what they're saying or what they've seen and believe is not true. I think that one time that person brings up something that is debunked and false, and I debunk it at the table, might be the very first time that someone out there has heard an alternative point of view.
This seems very condescending, but Brianna, you've appeared on CNN many times with Abby Phillips as a host. What do you make of her comments here?
I would simply say I can count on my hand. There was one instance in which the Chiron on her show told me that young black children were being zip-tied by ICE agents. That turned out to be a hoax. It was actually a police officer father arresting his adorable 2-year-old for being too cute. But they told me that that was happening. And then another time, there was a fellow guest, Ryan James Gradusky, on there. He talked about the Ferguson effect. Abby Phillips didn't know what that was, neither did the rest of the panel. So it's almost like we're actually informing them when they're locked in their echo chamber.
Yeah, I think she may need a bit of a lesson in misinformation by the sounds of it herself. Brianna Lyman, thank you so much for joining me.
For having me.